finds, according to the vision itself, this man wandering forth alone into the wilderness. He comes to a distant place, a place apparently barren and forlorn, but one apart from the ordinary habitations of men. Here he seats himself and begins the quiet internal meditation upon the mystery of truth. Now in this meditation we are told in the vision, for example, that Hermes divides himself or separates himself from his body and his senses. This almost immediately gives us a certain hint of yoga or Vedanta, the presence of a discipline by means of which the conscious energies are directed away from objective things. It's clearly indicated. Hermes was following a formula or a pattern. He was performing a certain kind of devotion. And the implication further is that this devotion is that which was taught in the mysteries or in the secret schools of initiation. In any event, he retired into the inner parts of himself. He relaxed his objective senses. He depended not upon them, but upon the extension of an intuitive nature within him. And as he internalized, separating himself totally from all the concerns of this world, departing not only into the wilderness of a desert place, but into the inner wilderness of his own life, apart from all things, he suddenly beheld the universe open around him. It seemed to break, burst, unfold with incredible rapidity. And he beheld filling the universe, filling space, a strange monster. This monster was a great winged dragon, which writhed and turned and twisted in the air. And when we come to this, we come to our first exploration of comparative religion. Well, the description of this dragon is almost identical with the description given by Confucius of the mind of Lao Tzu. It was this strange, incredible power monster. Something like the Chinese dragon, particularly the imperial five-clawed symbol of heaven. To the Chinese, the dragon was a symbol of universal energy. It was the symbol of life per se. It was the symbol of all power and of God as power. In the vision, this dragon becomes the personification of universal mind, the intellect of the world. It is a creature of vast strength and mysterious appearance, both inviting and menacing, and as the vision tells us, utterly unfamiliar to the normal senses or to the expectancies of man's outward perception. When he is beholding the dragon is terrified. But there is nothing whatever in the vision to indicate that this dragon was a monster of evil. It was not. It was the dragon of the mysteries. It was the winged serpent of the ancient Egyptian Hieratic. It was the combined symbol of life, consciousness, motion, and mind. It was all these qualities and powers as one eternal rising thing. In the Chinese philosophy, the dragon is a most sacred and important symbol, inasmuch as it represents an animal that feeds from the sky. It derives no nutrition from the earth. It does not place its feet upon the earth. Its abode is space. It sleeps upon clouds. It never approaches man, and those who would discover it must journey to the most difficult and inaccessible areas. Yet this dragon in China is also the guardian of the pearl of great price. It is the guardian of the mysterious golden ball of light. It is even to some degree the devourer of the sun. And among the Chinese, of course, it was also the particular emblem of absolute sovereignty and royalty. Now, gives us symbolically, almost in the form of pictures, a story that we must also give some consideration to. It tells us that the nature of true mind is unknown to man. That what we call the mind is not the mind. That this thing that is really the mind is as incredible as the dragon. That it is utterly beyond our experience. And he tells us in one of the fragments that the mind that we know is not the mind. That what we call the source of thought is simply an aggregate of physical faculties and powers within us. That what we call the thinker is not the thinker. What we call reason is not the reason, with a capital R. What we call the God concept is not the true God concept. That what we are trying to define and defile in the very process is utterly beyond us. An incredible thing that in its first impact terrifies and brings us to our knees, beseeching it to conceal something of its radiance from us, because it is beyond our knowledge and beyond our power to endure. Thus, we have in the vision the immediate clarification of this thing which Hermes is later referred to as reason. That this is not the reason of the bookman. This is not the reason of scholarship. This is not the reason which arises only from the experience and contemplation of worldly things. This is not worldly wisdom. This is not the wisdom that is derived from the researches that we know. This is the wisdom which lives and forever exists free in space. A reason that never feeds upon earthly things, but has a life in itself. A reason that is wisdom of wings, an immortal creature. A creature forever in motion, forever frightening or fearful in its aspect, but at the same time, in its fearfulness of appearance only, for this reason destroys nothing, attacks nothing, injures nothing. The only way in which it hurts man is because it frightens him. It does nothing actually to injure him. Hermes, however, fearful of the tremendous impact of this mind in the form of the great dragon, beseeches reason to present itself to him in some more familiar or more simple form, and with heavenly things sort of folds back into itself again. And in the place of it is a great area of radiance. There is only light. And this light is therefore the appearance of reason. This light is a radiance abiding in space. This light that carries within itself the power of the dragon, yet it is not of the same terrible and menacing appearance. This radiance, then, to Hermes, obviously permeates all space, and reason takes upon itself the power of enlightenment. It is revealed as the enlightener, or the bringer of the light of the mind. And Hermes feels himself lifted up, and he is placed in the midst of this radiance. And he stands there, supported only by space and the light, having a foundation in everlastingness, because he is in the substance of light itself. And from this substance there can be no falling, and there can be no injury, and there can be no lack of anything. And yet, because Hermes has asked for wisdom, and asked to know the mystery of the great reason, which is the master of the great mystery of the world. He beholds something else, remains possible to him out of the power of the divine mind. And this thing that happens to him is that gradually he perceives something. He does not know what it is exactly. It seems like dark curtains, or mysterious streamers of mist, or a strange obscuration that flows down from above, as though it were water putting out fire. And this strange mist-like darkness, descending in every direction, slowly causes the radiance to fade out. The radiance is dissolved into this mist. The mist becomes more and more dense and impenetrable, until at last Hermes finds himself standing only in the mist. Yet where he stands has been the radiance, but water has put out the fire of light. Yet it was not earthly water. It was not anything that we know. It was a kind of conditioned darkness, not simple darkness, but a darkness that poured like water, or moved like some strange, mysterious fluid. And as this darkness finally caused the radiance to vanish into itself, so that it was no longer apparent or visible, Hermes became aware of sighing and of moaning, and of strange sounds coming out of the mist. And in the midst of all of this strange moaning and sound, he became aware that another transformation was taking place. He knew inwardly that what had happened was that matter, a mysterious, tangible substance, had gradually fallen from the sky and had devoured the radiance, and that this radiance was now locked in this strange, fluidic mist, and that this mist was what some of our mystics of the early 20th century referred to as the mist of matter. It was this material something that had swallowed up the light, and because of this, there was a strange moaning and crying and sighing. As this condition continued for a time, another strange and wonderful thing happened. There arose out of this mist and this darkness, now ascending from below, a great column, a pillar. And this pillar became a great radiant thing standing in the midst of the mist. And Hermes heard the voice of reason, the great invisible dragon that was no longer to be seen. And the invisible dragon declared that this mysterious thing that had risen out of the darkness was the word of the mind, the power. That this mysterious mind-word power represented a kind of instrument that was brought forth and created out of mind itself, out of being, out of reason, that was to stand under everlastingness as the symbol, like the column of Enoch, of the enduring fact. It was the pillar perhaps set up in Egypt, referred to in the Old Testament. Anyway, it was the steadfastness of the Lord, standing forever like a rock, like a great column, a great lighthouse or tower, forever standing in the darkness. Now this thing that stood in the darkness was a symbol also, but it was a symbol that in the Hermetic mystery, and particularly with some of the later Hermetists, takes on a great many actions. This tower takes on some of the qualities of the mysterious rainbow of Noah, because this tower is the tower of the covenant. While this tower stands, there also stands the power, which stood, stands, and shall stand. This column represents the presence of reality in the midst in the midst of the darkness. It is the ever-present and indestructible monument, the lighthouse, the testimony unto the ages. And perhaps Berlin is not so far from the fact when he tells, indirectly, that to him this tower means the law. This tower is the law. And this law is the law that stands in the darkness, that remains whether man knows it or not, sees it or not, understands it or not. And modern science, looking out into the universe, beholds a tower of law.
Thanks for joining me with Manly P. Hall and Kush Sessions. This is Capricious Conch. Peace out.